Welcome, everyone. If you are tuning in today, there's a really good chance you're a planner and you're currently deep in study mode, prepping for your professional certification exam.
And we know how that goes. Poring over textbooks and case law can be a pretty isolating experience.
Yeah, exactly. So the mission for this deep dive is to serve as your intensive study session for the day. We are dissecting a pivotal case study from an article by John Steele. It's titled "When Planning, Politics, Public Interest, and Ethics Collide."
Which is a very fitting title, honestly.
It really is. It's a highly detailed look at this massive, incredibly controversial development project in Saskatchewan. And this whole thing ultimately led to the removal of an elected official. So it's a dramatic sequence of events, but more importantly for you listening, it's an absolute masterclass in professional ethics and administrative law.
Right, and the real value of this specific case for your exam prep is how perfectly it illustrates the actual collision of planning theory, political pressure, and the public trust. I mean, it's one thing to just memorize ethical codes.
Right, the flashcards.
Exactly, the
Yeah.
flashcards. But it's another thing entirely to see those codes tested in a complex, multidisciplinary scenario involving planners, politicians, and private developers all kind of clashing.
Yeah. So we're going to walk through the procedural and ethical nuances of this article step by step. By the end of this discussion, the mechanisms of how to navigate these exact real-world scenarios will be completely unpacked for your exam.
So let's get into it.
Let's set the geographical states first, because it's really crucial for understanding the dynamics at play here. The source materials you're studying include a map of the rural municipality of Sherwood, usually just referred to as the RM.
Right.
So the RM of Sherwood is a small rural community home to fewer than 1,000 residents, but its borders are completely unique. It entirely surrounds the much larger city of Regina. It operates essentially as this jurisdictional donut hole.
And that geographical context informs the entire conflict. You have a small municipal body that is equipped primarily to handle, rural agricultural issues. And suddenly, they're confronted with an urban-scale proposal right on their borders, which just pushes their administrative capacity to the absolute brink.
Yeah, and that proposal was called Wascana Village. We are not talking about a modest subdivision here. The developers proposed a 736-acre urban development located southeast of Regina, partially bordering the city limit.
Which is massive for an RM.
Huge. But the central complication, the detail that really triggered the entire cascade of events, was the ownership of that land. The majority of the acreage slated for Wascana Village was owned by the RM's reeve, which is the rural equivalent of a mayor, along with his relatives.
Yeah, and a development of that magnitude on land owned by the head of the local government, I mean, that requires incredibly rigorous, transparent oversight.
You would think.
You would think. But instead, the procedural guardrails just disintegrated almost immediately. The inquiry report, which was later compiled by Judge Barclay, highlighted that the RM had never in its history considered a high-density residential development of this scale.
It was entirely unprecedented for them.
Completely. Yet they moved to approve the concept plan in a matter of hours.
The timeline detailed in the report is honestly difficult to comprehend from a standard planning perspective. How does a municipality process a 736-acre urban development without standard professional staff reports or environmental impact studies?
Well, the short answer is they don't process it. They just push it through.
Wow.
The elapsed time between the motion being tabled and the actual vote taking place was roughly 1 minute.
1 minute.
A 1-minute approval process for a project of that size is, it's the ultimate red flag in municipal governance. There was absolutely no technical foundation for the decision.
So with an approval process that hollow, the province must have noticed when the concept plan was submitted for their final sign-off. What was the provincial response to that submission?
Oh, the province rejected the concept plan outright.
I would hope so.
Yeah, the technical failures were just too massive to ignore.
Yeah.
The proposal lacked the most rudimentary requirements for a development of this scale. There was no confirmed water source.
Unbelievable.
There was no viable sewage treatment plan. And there were completely unresolved environmental impacts. Specifically, the site was home to burrowing owl nesting grounds.
Oh, right, the burrowing owl.
Yeah, which require strict mitigation strategies that were entirely absent from the plan.
And adding to that technical chaos was this intense financial pressure, right? Because there was a developer from Ontario waiting in the wings.
Exactly. The Ontario developer had a purchase agreement for the land, but it was conditional upon favorable rezoning.
Ah, so a ticking clock.
Exactly. That creates this artificial high-stakes timeline. The developer needs the zoning change to execute the purchase, and the landowners, which includes the Reeve, need that zoning change to secure their payout.
Okay, so the province rejects the plan due to these obvious technical deficiencies. But how does a standard technical rejection escalate into a full legal investigation into the RM's internal behavior?
Well, the escalation involves a specific procedural mechanism under the Municipalities Act. In June 2014, recognizing the just bizarre nature of the rapid approval and the severe lack of technical diligence, the Minister of Government Relations stepped in.
Okay.
The minister appointed Judge Barclay to conduct an inspection. Now, at this initial stage, an inspection is simply a mechanism to review the events leading up to the council's approval and just assess the appropriateness of the actions taken by municipal employees and council members.
An inspection sounds somewhat routine, like a basic administrative audit. But looking at your study materials, this did not remain a simple inspection for long. What did Judge Barclay uncover that changed the trajectory of the whole investigation?
Well, during that initial inspection, Judge Barclay discovered evidence that the Reeve had maintained inappropriate, behind-the-scenes involvement in the Wascana Village project.
Which is a huge
A
problem.
massive problem. And this was particularly alarming because the Reeves had formally declared a pecuniary interest, meaning a financial conflict, and had supposedly recused himself.
Suppose.
Right. Once the judge found evidence of ongoing interference, the minister escalated the matter from a mere inspection to a full-blown inquiry.
And the scale of that inquiry really highlights the severity of the situation. The report notes that 14 witnesses testified over 18 days, with 377 IBITs entered into evidence.
It was extensive.
Very. And the witness list included RM staff, the developer, the Reeve, and notably, the province's executive director of community planning.
Yeah, and the provincial planner's experience during this inquiry is incredibly telling for anyone studying this field. They were on the stand, facing intense examination and cross-examination for 4 full days.
4 days on the stand just for doing their job.
Exactly. Because when a massive development is derailed by provincial oversight, the legal strategy of the developers and the compromised municipality is often to aggressively challenge the provincial planner's objective findings. They try to find any tiny flaw in the planner's assessment of the water, the sewer, or the environmental issues to somehow discredit the rejection.
So let's dig into the core ethical issue here, which is the conflict of interest. On paper, the Reeve did declare a financial interest. He officially stepped out of the room when that 1-minute vote took place. So from a layman's perspective, or maybe even a junior planner's perspective, it might look like he followed the rules. Why wasn't that formal recusal enough?
This is where we really have to dive into the jurisprudence highlighted in the report.
Oh.
One of the authors mentioned in your reading, Mascarin, points out a vital distinction between provincial statutes and common law obligations.
Okay, break that down for us.
So provincial statutes are the black and white rules created by the legislature. They usually dictate that if you have a financial interest, you state it and you leave the room. The Reeve checked that statutory box.
But the common law obligations are different.
Much broader and far less permissive. Common law is based on centuries of legal precedent and overarching principles of fairness and unbiased governance. Under common law, it's not just about whether you technically voted. It's about whether your influence, bias, or background actions compromise the integrity of the process. The report quotes the moral principle that no man can serve 2 masters. You cannot serve the public interest while simultaneously orchestrating a massive private payout.
And the financial specifics of that payout really underscore the depth of the conflict. The inquiry found the Reeve owned a significant portion of the Wascana Village land. He was slated to be compensated based on the overall profits of the entire development, not just his parcel.
Which is a huge detail.
Absolutely. He was contracted to be paid more per acre than the other landowners involved. Furthermore, his adjacent lands, the parcels he wasn't even selling, would massively increase in value due to the infrastructure upgrades required for the new village.
When you look at that level of financial entanglement, stepping out of the room for a 60-second vote is what we call the illusion of recusal. Judge Barclay noted that good conscience required something more. The evidence presented at the inquiry showed that the Reeve continued to play an active part with other councilors behind the scenes during the entire development period.
He removed his physical presence from the chamber, but his influence remained heavily over the entire process.
And that hidden influence is incredibly destructive to the planning profession. A planner's fundamental role is to act as an independent, objective advisor to their employers, to clients, and to the public.
That's the core of the job.
It is. When an elected official engages in this kind of shadow play, it threatens the reputation of the entire system. If the public realizes decisions are being made through back-channel pressure rather than objective analysis, the planner's professional judgment appears compromised, even if the planner is trying to do the exact right thing.
That concept of objective analysis ties directly into the duty to protect the public interest. According to the judge's findings, the RM failed the most foundational test of municipal planning.
The judge was very explicit on this point.
Yeah.
The RM never took the fundamental step of determining whether Wascana Village would actually be economically beneficial to the citizens of the municipality.
They just skipped it.
Completely bypassed it. They bypassed any form of cost-benefit analysis or life cycle assessment to see if maintaining the new roads, sewers, and services would bankrupt the RM in the long run.
The report features a really striking quote regarding the council's mindset. It states, "Council's assimilation with the developer's intention to make the matter political was a luxury not afforded to the RM." Let's break down what that assimilation actually means in practice.
Well, a private developer operates with a specific mandate, right? To advance their project, secure zoning, and maximize their return on investment. They are allowed, and honestly expected, to be political and aggressive in pursuing those goals.
Sure, that's their business.
But a municipal council, and the planners advising them, operate under a completely different mandate. Their strict legal and ethical duty is to the public interest. They must ensure that all conditions, environmental regulations, and financial safeguards are met before granting approval.
So by aligning so closely with the developer,
When the council assimilated with the developer's intentions, they effectively abandoned their public duty and acted as extensions of a private corporation.
when a council abandons that public duty and adopts a purely political, developer-driven mindset, the environment for the administrative staff must become incredibly difficult. The source material outlines a workplace dynamic that is a textbook example of professional toxicity.
Oh, it was brutal. The council ignored staff guidance entirely and viewed the regulatory process as merely a political obstacle to be bulldozed. The judge's report detailed allegations from former employees describing demanding unreasonable work conditions, deliberate understaffing, and overall poor treatment.
And all of that was tied to this one project.
All directly linked to the high-pressure push to approve Wascana Village.
The testimony from the former chief administrative officer, the CAO, provides a vivid picture of what happens when staff try to assert their professional boundaries. There was a specific incident where the administrative staff warned the council that their technical review might result in a report recommending against the concept plan bylaw.
And the reaction to that warning was severe. The CAO testified that upon hearing the staff might recommend against the plan, the Reeve completely lost his temper.
He just lost it.
Lost it. He issued a direct order that, from that moment forward, all staff reports must be positive and must explicitly recommend approving the concept plan, regardless of what the technical data actually showed.
Ordering planners to falsify their professional recommendations is a massive breach. Did the Reeve have any legal counsel advising him on how dangerous this behavior was?
He did. His own lawyer had provided him with a formal legal opinion explicitly warning him not to vote, participate, or even discuss his lands with the planners or administrative personnel. The legal advice was unequivocal: stay completely out of it.
But he didn't listen.
Not at all. He ignored his own counsel entirely. The CAO testified to receiving constant direct instructions from the Reeve. The Reeve was actively directing the administration to secure water sources, solve the sewage issues, and arrange highway access, utilizing municipal resources to facilitate the rezoning of his personal property.
With the Reeve so blatantly ignoring legal advice and issuing these directives, how did the administration handle the paper trail? Were there records of this interference just sitting in the municipal files?
This is where the situation escalated from unethical behavior to an active cover-up. The CAO testified under oath that the Reeve gave explicit instructions to destroy documents.
Wow. Destroying documents.
Yes, this included deleting emails that contained any reference to his involvement in the Wascana Village project. Furthermore, the official meeting minutes were retroactively altered to remove the Reeve's name from the list of attendees, attempting to create a false record of his recusal.
The deception was just layered throughout the entire administration, and they didn't just hide their own actions, they actively attacked the oversight mechanisms. The judge noted that the council wrongly targeted and demonized the provincial planner.
The provincial planner was simply executing their mandated duties by identifying the lack of water, sewer, and environmental mitigation. But because the council had assimilated with the developer's political mindset, they viewed the provincial planner not as a regulatory partner, but as an enemy.
They needed a scapegoat.
Exactly. They projected their frustration onto the civil servant who was standing in the way of the financial payout.
The sheer volume of ethical and legal breaches, from the 1-minute approval to document destruction, had to result in significant consequences. What was the immediate fallout once Judge Barclay finally concluded the inquiry?
The provincial government's response was swift. Based on the findings of the inquiry, the government of Saskatchewan utilized its authority to officially remove the Reeves from office.
A huge step.
Very rare, but necessary here. Recognizing that the existing statutory frameworks had failed to prevent this, the province also enacted new legislation designed to significantly tighten conflict of interest regulations for municipal officials, closing those loopholes between statutory requirements and common law expectations.
And what happened to Wascana Village itself? Did the developer try to salvage the massive project after the political maneuvering was exposed?
Facing the reality of the province's firm rejection, the exposure of the ethical breaches, and the sheer cost of actually fixing the technical deficiencies, the developer ultimately dropped the revised concept plan.
So it all fell apart.
The conditional purchase agreement lapsed. The RM of Sherwood was forced to entirely regroup.
And looking at the source map provided in your study materials, it shows a specific outcome of that regrouping. There is a shaded area labeled the joint planning area between the RM and the city of Regina.
Yes, following the inquiry, the RM drafted a new official community plan. The joint planning area represents a shift toward collaborative, transparent border management with the city of Regina, replacing that isolated, secretive approach of the past.
That's a much healthier approach.
Definitely. Furthermore, the new policies mandate that any future development proposals require rigorous life cycle assessments and comprehensive cost-benefit analyses, ensuring that the economic impact on the public is evaluated before any political decisions are made.
The turnaround from a secretive, 1-minute approval process to mandated life cycle assessments is a massive shift. Let's synthesize the core lessons from this entire ordeal for your exam. The article lays out fundamental obligations that every planner must internalize and apply in their daily practice.
There are 3 primary obligations demonstrated by the failures in Sherwood. First, planners must rigorously maintain their status as independent professionals. The primary responsibility is providing objective, comprehensive analysis based on data and planning principles, completely insulated from what a developer or an elected official desires the outcome to be.
That independence is the absolute bedrock of the profession. What is the second obligation?
Second, planners must maintain hyper-awareness regarding conflict of interest issues, recognizing that these conflicts go far beyond simple financial disclosures. As we saw with the common law obligations, a planner must be attuned to subtle biases, hidden influences, and the overarching public perception of fairness. If a process appears compromised, the planner must distance their professional judgment from that process.
And the third, perhaps most difficult obligation, deals with the daily reality of the workplace.
Right. The third obligation is the unwavering requirement to protect the public interest, even when facing intense administrative or political pressure. The Wascana Village case is extreme, but pressure from administration is a reality in municipal governance.
That brings up a highly practical scenario discussed by the author John Steele, drawing on his experience with the Professional Practice Review Committee. How does the planner handle the classic, "my boss told me to do it" defense? If a CAO orders a planner to alter a recommendation, can the planner simply claim they were following orders?
Another reading you'll come across, an article by Smith on ethics and planning, tackles this exact defense. The standard is incredibly clear. Closing your eyes and saying, "my employer told me to do it," is never an acceptable professional rationalization.
It doesn't shield you.
Not at all. A planner's paramount obligation is to the public interest and to the ethical codes of their profession. That obligation strictly supersedes the demands of an employer if those demands require falsifying data or violating ethical standards.
Understanding that principle is one thing, but sitting at a desk and being told to falsify a document by the person who signs your paychecks is another. What is the actual actionable roadmap for a planner in that situation? What are the specific steps dictated by professional standards like those of the APA or the AICP?
The professional standards provide a structured approach to escalation. The very first step is to advise your supervisor of the ethical conflict directly, but in a professional, non-threatening manner. You lay out the objective facts, discuss the long-term consequences of what they're asking, and attempts to seek alternative solutions that achieve the municipality's goals without violating professional ethics. You try to resolve the tension internally through education.
But in the RM of Sherwood, the Reeve was screaming at the staff and ordering positive reports. Internal education wasn't going to work there. When the supervisor refuses to listen and issues an ultimatum, what does the planner do next?
When forced into a corner, the choices are difficult but necessary. The ultimate stand for professional integrity is resignation, removing oneself entirely from the compromised environment. However, the source material offers another highly effective alternative.
Which is?
A planner can write the technical report accurately, outlining the data and recommendations exactly as their professional judgment dictates. But when ordered to change the conclusions, the planner refuses to sign the document.
Refusing to sign forces the issue out into the open.
It does. It forces the administrators or politicians who are demanding the unsubstantiated changes to sign their own names to the document. It creates a clear paper trail showing that the professional planner did not endorse the flawed decision, protecting the planner's liability and the integrity of the profession.
Taking that kind of stand requires immense courage, especially for a junior planner whose livelihood is on the line. This is why Steele concludes the article by arguing that the burden cannot rest solely on the shoulders of individual planners fighting isolated battles against toxic administrations.
Steele makes a strong call for systemic institutional support. Organizations like the College of Fellows or networks of knowledgeable senior peers must provide active support systems. When a planner faces the kind of intimidation seen in Sherwood, they need an external network to offer strategic advice on navigating the municipal system, or in extreme cases, to take a public institutional stance against the threats being levied at the professional. The profession must actively protect the planner, so the planner can protect the public.
To summarize our discussion, the Wascana Village case study is a profound illustration of planning mechanisms breaking down under political weight. A 736-acre project driven by an elected official's financial interests bypassed environmental and infrastructural reviews, resulting in a one-minute approval. We saw the common law principles of conflict of interest violated, administrative staff subjected to intense hostility, and explicit orders to destroy documents and alter professional reports. The subsequent provincial inquiry led to the removal of the Reeve, new legislation, and a reinforced mandate for objective, independent planning analysis.
The depth of the procedural and ethical failures in this case provides a perfect framework for understanding the strict boundaries of the planning profession. It demonstrates why robust technical analysis, transparent governance, and unwavering ethical standards are not just theoretical concepts, but vital protections for the public.
As you continue preparing for your professional exam, we want to leave you with a specific, practical scenario to consider. We know the ethical standard requires you to refuse to compromise your integrity. But imagine yourself situated in that RM office as a junior planner. Your CAO and the Reeve are actively demanding you falsify a report and your job is genuinely threatened. What specific practical mechanisms would you utilize to securely document that pressure, and how would you safely escalate the issue to external professional bodies before the situation resulted in a catastrophic approval? Pondering the logistics of that escalation is the exact type of critical thinking required for the complexities of real-world planning. Keep studying, keep analyzing the frameworks, and keep the public interest at the forefront of your practice.